How's it going, people? How are you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we'll be breaking down Manuel Pellegrini's tactics in FC 24. Obviously, in a video like this, I look to replicate the most realistic tactics as possible. So if you guys don't mind smashing the like button, subscribing if you like the content and all that good stuff, really. And yes, let's hop on straight into the goddamn video. So first things first, starting off with the formation, I have selected a 4-2-3-1 narrow, and the reason for doing this is throughout the course of the game, whether it's the likes of Perez or Fekir on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, they do tend to interchange quite a bit with the likes of Isco, and of course, narrowing the midfield players just in behind the striker tends to allow them to interchange very efficiently and effectively. So that's why I've selected the narrow version. Other than that, I've made no major changes to the formation at hand, so therefore it would be one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, two DMs, one attacking midfielder, two wider midfielders, and then of course, one striker. So up next, we have got the tactics. Now, the tactical vision that I've selected is tiki-taka, more so because when you watch the likes of Real Betis play, most of their players, if not all of their players, are very comfortable on the ball. That means when building up from back to front, the centre-backs, the full-backs, everybody are very good at being able to find a pass, pick out a play, make sure that they are consistently supporting the opposition, or not the opposition, the offense when building out the offense. So tiki-taka reflects a very realistic Manuel Pellegrini set of tactics. As for the defense and the defensive style, I've set this to pressure on heavy touch. More so, they are very intense on pressing, but more so keeping the shape and the structure. You will see that with these tactics as well, there is a 4-4-2 formation that does tend to form with the likes of Isco, and whoever you have as your striker, they'll look to aggressively press the opposition's backline, and that will more or less form that front two. But at the same time, keeping the structure intact is very much what Pellegrini expects from his side, making it very hard to try and play through them at times. Moving on to the team width, I've set this to 45. It's a very balanced approach. It does create these man-v-man type situations, but it also maintains the structure of the side. And like I said, with the defensive style, maintaining the structure is most important to the side and making sure it's very hard to try and play it through. Because if a man is beaten, you'll still have another man to try and cover for him in certain moments. As for the depth, it is set to 60, so this will allow you to maintain a mid-block, slightly higher mid-block, you could say, but you don't have the most pace in your back line, so you need to try and minimize the space in behind. And of course, I think 60 does this very realistically as well as very effectively. In terms of the offense, the builder player is set to slow build-up. Now, this allows for the centre-backs to show for the ball from the goalkeeper restarts. It allows you to progress the ball through the final thirds very efficiently, very effectively, and it will still allow for players to try and support the on-ball player with passing options. In terms of the chance creation, I've set this to balance. Now, this can allow you to incorporate various different aspects of it, of course, whether it's the possession-based brand, which I do think Real Betis tend to more or less choose. They want to try and maintain the ball, progress it through the lines, make sure that there's always passing options in and around them. But at the same time, if required, if needed, especially with the likes of Bakambu or Avila on the pitch, they will also look to make those forward runs, push the midfield nice and high up the field, as well as with the direct passing. They can also look to break in behind, whether it's the likes of a Rodri down the left or the right-hand channel, or the likes of a Fekir, or maybe even an Isco in certain moments. But more so, I think a balanced approach not only suits the tiki-taka style of play, but it also incorporates these various different aspects into your game plan. As for the width, now I've set this to 55. They don't overly stretch the field. Of course, the wing-backs do bomb forward and attack in those wider areas, but at the same time, you want to try and narrow that midfield three just in behind the striker, and that allows for them to interchange positions, sometimes even pull players into those wider areas if required, if need be, but more so, you want to try and narrow the attacking outlet more centrally. Progressing on to the players in the box, I've set this to a very balanced 5. This will allow for the attackers to be in and around the box, but at the same time still maintaining, 3 to 4 players in and around the opposition's box. This can help with rotation of the ball, working into those better areas, and maybe working a cutback opportunity. They don't really cross the ball as much, so you don't really need to overload the box with, numbers and players and all that stuff. They more so look to try and cut it back, and that's very much signified with the opening goal from last night's game, where the likes of Bellerin, he drove to the baseline, then drove it along the baseline, and then cut it back. And it was Miranda who ended up being in the box and obviously putting it in the back of the net. That was for their first goal. So you want to try and create these cutback situations quite efficiently, quite effectively, and you don't want to overload the opposition's box. As for the corners and the free kicks, as always, it is set to 4. Now guys, taking a look at the instructions for each individual player, of course starting off at the back with the likes of Silva, the goalkeeper. He is set to be cautious on the crosses, more so allowing for the backline to try and deal with the crosses and the whipped in passes when they are, supplied into the box. So he'll more so look to try and stay on his line, as well as in terms of saving outside of the box, you aren't really playing a super high line, you're playing a mid block. And you can allow for, again, the backline to try and deal with the situations where there's a ball played in over the top or through the lines. And you'll allow for them to try and deal with it, allowing for your goalkeeper to try and stay on his line. I think these two instructions just more so reflect a very realistic Silva set of instructions and how he actually plays in real life. As for your backline, you don't really need to make too many changes to it. Bartra and Pizzella, just set to their base set of instructions. As for your two fullbacks, however, slightly differing roles, but they do have very similar outcomes. Now, what I did note was the likes of Bellerin, of course, well known for his attacking outlets. He was more or less allowed the free reins to bomb forward as much as possible. And when he was in these, very high, wide attacking positions, they would look to always supply him with the ball down that right-hand flank. So he is set to join the attack, overlap, as well as stick to position. Whereas the likes of Miranda, a slightly more reserved role, but yes, he did score last night and he does, bomb forward down the left-hand channel. But it's like I said, it's slightly more reserved, so a balanced approach best suits him, as well as when he does get forward, he also looks to make those overlapping runs. A lot of the times, the fullbacks supply the width down either side. And then finally, the defensive positioning is set to stick to position. Now, progressing on into our midfield, we've got the likes of Rodriguez and Carvalho as our double pivot. So we'll start off with Rodriguez. They do have very similar roles with a few tweaks and variations to it. So for Rodriguez, the defensive behavior is set to balance. This allows him to maintain the shape and more so take up those central positions very efficiently and very effectively as well. But also keep in mind that with the defensive position, both of your double pivots are allowed to drift into those wide areas and try and support the more attacking fullbacks as well. So it's a very balanced, but at the same time mixed approach with the ability for them to both stay central as well as drift wide. In terms of the attacking support for both of your DMs, they are told to stay back. But because we have Rodriguez set to being the deep lying playmaker, it does allow for the likes of Carvalho to somewhat get further up the field and support the attacks. But what you never want happening is both of them, being out of position. More so with Pellegrini, especially with the bombing on fullbacks, he wants both of those DMs in, those central areas protecting the back two at times. So therefore, stay back while attacking is absolutely essential. The interceptions is set to normal, and then of course for Rodriguez, deep lying playmaker, and then of course cover the wing. As you'll see for Carvalho, like I said earlier, very similar role, but the defensive behavior for him is set to cut passing lane. So more naturally, he will have a slightly higher starting position, and he will be allowed to venture further forward. You can look to get him on the ball and then drive forward and interchange passes and create overloads higher up the field, yes, but you never want him being in the final third in the box attacking. It's never been a thing of Manuel Pellegrini, especially with last night's game. Cardoso, he did get forward, he did support the attack, but he was never in the box. He was always on the edge of the area looking to rotate play and facilitate a bit better. So therefore, cut passing lane, stay back while attacking, normal interceptions, as well as stick to position, and then of course cover the wing. So moving on into the attacking side of things now, of course we've got the likes of Isco, the man who dictates the pace of play for this Real Betis side. So he is set to come back on defense. Quite often you'd see Isco drop very deep, get on the ball, spray a few passes, interchange a few passes with the back line as well as the deeper lying midfielders, and you want him to do this very well. At the same time as well, when out of possession, he would look to aggressively press the opposition, which is why I've got interception set to aggressive, but he would also look to drop a bit deep and help support the defense as well. The support on crosses is set to balance because every now and then you would see him drift into the box, on the edge of the area. He would be all over the place, and more so a balanced approach mimics this very, very well. The positioning freedom is set to drift wide because you would see Isco obviously take up that number 10 role, but he would also interchange with the likes of Pablo Fornals, especially when Perez was on the field. He would interchange with Pablo Fornals, play on the right-hand side, get the ball, dictate the pace of play. And that ability for him to drift in and out of those central areas also open up quite a bit of space for the striker as well as for Perez and Fornals to try and operate in. Onto the likes of Fornals. So he has a slightly different role as that right midfielder compared to the likes of Perez, but he is set to come back on defense, cut inside, and then come short. And this does help with the interchangeability of Isco and Fornals. You'll quite often see in the game Isco drifting to that wide right space, as well as Fornals drifting more centrally. Of course, Fornells is a wider midfielder, but he's also well known to be an attacking midfielder, especially with his time at Villarreal. I'm pretty sure it was either Villarreal or no, it was Villarreal. It was. So yes, you want to have him in those attacking areas as much as possible. Finally, the interceptions is set to normal, and then of course the support on crosses is set to balanced. So onto the likes of Perez, Ayoze Perez, he's set to a basic defensive support. So yes, he can drop a bit deeper and support the likes of Miranda, or at the same time stay further up the field, be it an attacking option if a counter is, sprung into play. The chance creation is set to balance, allowing him to drift in and out of that wider left channel as well. More so, if the likes of Miranda doesn't bomb forward, he can look to hug the wide left touchline. But at the same time, if he does, he can look to come inside and act as an inside forward. The support runs is set to balance, also allowing for him to use his pace in behind, but at the same time as well, coming a bit short, linking up very nicely with Isco, because even though Perez didn't do it as much, he was still quite in tune with coming a bit more central, getting into the box, almost taking up a secondary striker role himself. The interceptions is set to normal, and then of course the support on crosses is set to get into the box. He was very much an attacking threat when he was on the field. Now moving on to the striker, William Jose. So he is set to stay central and be a target man, quite often using his physicality, winning the aerial duels, knocking it down to the likes of an Isco, a Perez, or a Fornells. And you do need a strong physical target man when you are playing with a team like this, specifically like this. More so because you don't have that physicality in your front line. The only real player that does possess it is the likes of your striker. So you want him to be able to back into the opposition defenders, more or less eliminate some players from those specific, attacking movements in the game. So target man and stay central is absolutely vital, especially with the sheer amount of movement that he does have in behind him as well. The interceptions is set to normal, and then of course the defensive support is set to basic. Sometimes he would also look to drop a bit deeper, support the defense, other times hanging further up the field and waiting to be a counter-attacking option. So my dudes, if you do want to make rotations to the side, there are a few differing instructions that I would give to the likes of a Bakambu as well as a Fekir. So for Bakambu, he does have a similar build to what William Jose does, but he did tend to drift quite a lot throughout the opposition's backline, whether it was on the right or the left or more centrally. So therefore, I think the support runs for him should be set to balanced, as well as the attacking runs set to target man. Of course, he also made a few extra runs in behind, waiting for a potential ball over the top, but he was never found. More so, you still want him to have that physicality and bring that into the game plan. Like I said earlier, you have the likes of an Isco, a Fornells, a Perez, a Fekir in this situation, and they don't possess the crazy physicality that you would require, so you do need a strong physical striker up front. The interceptions is set to aggressive. He did bring a bit more energy to the game when he did play, over the likes of a William Jose. So again, I would set the interceptions to aggressive to try and mimic that work rate, you could say. And then of course, just like with the previous striking set of instructions, he's set to a basic defensive support. Onto the likes of Nabil Fekir. Now he did play on the left-hand side, but he was quite prone to interchanging with Isco, more so than Isco and Fornells interchanging. So very similar role to what Fornells had. Come back on defense, cut inside, and then come short. Now, because Isco is naturally set to drift wide, he can do this on either side, which is quite nice. It does open up a whole lot of different options for your side. It does allow you to more or less pull players out of those central positions or even out of those wider areas as well, especially if they are trying to somewhat man mark the players that you have on your field. And then, of course, normal interceptions and then balanced crossing runs. And there you have it, guys. That is how I would replicate and recreate the Manuel Pellegrini Real Betis set of instructions and tactics for FC24. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. As always, if you don't mind smashing the like button down below, subscribing if you are new, and all that good stuff, leaving a comment as well, that would be fan-damn-tastic. In terms of the overall rating, I really do like the system. I like the interchangeability. I like the free-flowing fluid movements up front as well. The overall players could definitely improve, but in terms of the rating out of 10, I would give this a solid 8.5. Like I say, the fluidity up front works very well. I like the ability to have a strong physical number 9 that can win the aerial balls, knock it down to your creative wide playmakers as well. And it just works very, very nicely for FC24. You guys can let me know, though, down below in the comment section. But until the next one, until the next time, I hope you have a damn great day, and I'm out.